Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wayne County Chambers podcast, For the Record. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Sport Durst of Goldsboro, Goldsboro Builder Supply, and Professional Data Management. The Sport Durst team is ready to get you into a beautiful new Volkswagen. Offering open and honest pricing on every vehicle and service, Sport Durst of Goldsboro understands the value of your time and dollars. Providing quality building materials since 1953, Goldsboro Builder Supply is your premier destination for custom designs and excellent service to builders and contractors in Wayne County and surrounding areas. Professional Data Management offers specialized service and technologies designed to help you gain maximum reimbursements for the valuable services that your office provides. Another huge thank you to our in-kind sponsors, Daniel's Furniture, University Lights of Goldsboro, and Johnson Carpet One, who together worked hard to make our beautiful podcast set what you see today. And for the record, we're glad you're here.
Well, today we are very fortunate here on For the Record. That's the name of this podcast here, boys. How you like that?
I think it's pretty creative.
I'm concerned about how we're going to define fortunate by the time this is all over.
Yeah, For the Record. So if you don't like it, you can't say that you don't like it, right? I mean, so I'm with two very special guys today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and the organizations they represent. Maybe tell us a little bit about your families, if you don't mind. Daniel, maybe you want to kick us off?
My name is Daniel Weeks. I'm 39 years old. September the 9th, I'll turn 40.
Oh, snap.
They'll put my Cash App in the link.
Yeah.
So I had to get my first pastor comment out of it.
Good.
Now, I've been married to Caitlin Weeks for 17 years and some change. We've got 6 kids, and we've got the privilege of serving the congregation at Bethel Church right here in Goldsboro.
And you're the pastor?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
10-4.
I am.
Yes, my name is Terry Jones, and I am married 20 years. I've been married to my lovely wife, Juliet Jones, for 20 years. We have 3 boys. We love them dearly. I'm the pastor of the City Church of Goldsboro, and in January, we will be celebrating 10 years of ministry.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
I'm excited about that.
Very good. Bravo. Awesome. Bravo. Well, guys, we go back a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and even Will's back there somewhere. He goes back. We all go... Dub. We've all been around each other, it seems like. I mean, as I just sort of think, at least in my time in Wayne County, as I've spent time here, I've always seen you guys as my peers, you know, like, so it's kind of special for me, for you guys to be here today, because I don't know, you know, we knew each other when we were nobody, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're still nobodies, but you know what I mean?
I think I met you for the first time.
Oh, Lord.
You walked in to like a youth pastor's meeting. Will was there. You were there. We were at the bridge Goldsboro.
Oh, you talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought he was talking about me. I was scared.
No, I'm not talking about you.
Oh, nice.
And like, I think within 10 minutes, we were already having a debate on Calvinism versus Arminianism.
Yeah,
I was like,
wild.
This is my guy right here. I don't like this guy.
Well, a lot of love and a lot of respect in this room today, at least from this direction. And I appreciate you guys making the time. And first of all, I think it's important to say that we don't spend a lot of time talking about the chamber on this here podcast, but through the chamber, we have something called LIFT, which is Leaders in Faith. And it's been this effort to try to basically just engage communities of faith in the work of the business community and just the community in general through the chamber. And this has been the mechanism to do it. And you guys have really been the key leaders there. I mean, you know, when we wanted to go this route, we went and talked to y'all, and y'all said, yay or nay. You're the ones who have made that effort occur. And I guess I just want to say on behalf of the chamber, thank you for that. And thank you for being here. So you're both pastors, and it's always funny to me whenever I tend to, having been a pastor, I've heard this and I've seen it occur a lot, and it's occurred a lot in the business community, I think. But do you ever sense or get the feeling that when people realize that you're a pastor, that I don't want to say disrespect sounds so negative, but there's maybe an underappreciation for your ability as a gifted leader. And because when I look at you guys, I think, oh my gosh, these are guys that I'd want to talk to, be around, get advice from. But I think sometimes if you go to the business community, you say you're a pastor. Have you guys noticed that it's a little bit different?
Yeah, I think so. And I can acknowledge that feeling sometimes. I think probably one of the key reasons, though, is that a lot of times, our business leaders in our church are not acknowledged as actual ministers. You know what I mean? It's kind of gets reversed. And I think many times pastors are looked at, although they're not real leaders, they couldn't do what I do. But I think a lot of that has to do with sometimes business leaders are sitting in a church, they lead massive organizations, they're making disciples Monday through Saturday, and they're never acknowledged as ministers. So I think it kind of, I'm not trying to tear up your question, but I think it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think instead of working hand in hand, there's kind of this competition that's almost being built up, where if you don't do it like me, then you're not on my level, and vice versa, even when it comes to business leaders. And we both have gifts, items, information systems that can be shared conversely one with the other, where together we can see the work of the kingdom go even further by doing it tag team versus in competition with one another.
Huge. That's massively true, right? And I know, even having made the transition from full-time ministry to business, you're like, oh gosh, man, the church could benefit from XYZ. And then I think, gosh, the business community could benefit from XYZ and interlift, I guess. That's the hope. But I just think it is interesting to see the dynamic of how pastors are sort of portrayed, or just like anybody. I think sometimes people get pigeonholed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They can only do this or they can only do that. But let's talk a little bit about the leadership capacity required to lead a church. You think about a local church. Take us through what is required of you guys. If you're at the top of that organization, I know we don't like to talk about top and all that stuff in hierarchy, but the truth of the matter is you're the leader. So what does that look like?
I would say the first requirement maybe is being borderline crazy, because it's ghetto out here.
Yeah.
But, I think as I've gotten older, I have matured. If I would have known then what I know now, our organization can be so much further. I'd be so much further. And maybe more importantly, I'd be healthier. And even as I think about my children, and whether younger ministers who have a calling on their life who potentially are following up, I want them to be better. I want them to go further. I want them to go faster. But most importantly, I want to ensure that they are healthier in the process. So
I want to drill down a little bit there. So in what way, in what sense, when you say, I wish I'd have known then what I knew,
Well, I think one of the things, Terry and I have talked about this before, is there's so much emphasis, especially if you have any kind of drive whatsoever to accomplish and be obedient to what the Lord has called you to. There's so much emphasis placed on doing and not a lot of emphasis placed on being. And when you place emphasis on your being, like who you are, personal health, mental health, your own spiritual health, I think a lot of times that we just assume that, they're a pastor, they must be spiritually healthy. But sometimes pastors are not spiritually healthy because they're so focused on doing things for the kingdom that they forget that Romans 12:2, when it talks about being in God's will, it doesn't say doing God's will. It says being in God's will. So I think that's a lot of the things that over the past several years that I've begun realizing is that my personal, physical, spiritual, mental, and the health of my family matters more than anything that I could do.
Yeah. I think even in addition to that, I have found myself apologizing to partners and believers for things that I didn't do. But having been hurt, offended, abused, misused by other spiritual leaders or other leaders, it's like in order for them to heal, we got to first admit this happened to me. And because they're not here to apologize for it, I'll apologize on their behalf. And to the best of my ability, I'll make myself a person who can be safe for you. But in addition to that, I think because of the stigma that can come sometimes with being a spiritual leader, it's my preference, me personally, that before you are known, you know me as a pastor. I want you to know me as a person. Yeah. My preference is that if I'm introduced, just introduce me first as Terry, and you can discover later what I do. Because of the stigma and the reputation. And I want an opportunity for a clean slate and a fresh start, not just for me, but for spiritual leaders everywhere.
It's a great point. It's like it's loaded. Like that word pastor is a loaded word.
Absolutely.
That if it's on a business card or if it fits what you lead with, there's something happens in people's brains, whether it's good or bad, that they don't get to maybe know the real you. There is no clean slate. You start with baggage, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, and people see from where they are. So based off of their past experience with a pastor, I ultimately become that based off of that experience.
That's good.
And so,
that is so interesting. Now, the time required, let's talk about some actual leadership skill stuff, right? You guys... tell me if you may not have to do this at your churches, but most of the pastors that I know, you have to prepare budgets.
I have a hand in that, yep.
You have a hand in that?
Yes, sir.
So you have to figure out how to meet those budgets. So there's the revenue generation. Got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. You have to manage and plan a scope of work. And in your cases, you're managing a group of volunteers. Now, you probably have some paid staff, but most of the work is, would you say, is carried out by volunteers?
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
most definitely.
So, I don't know if people in the world know this, but it's a little easier to manage somebody who you pay.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I would think at least you have some backstop, right?
Ish.
Yeah.
So I don't want to disagree with you too much here, but
Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, well, I'm just trying to, all I'm trying to do right now is illustrate all of the different tasks that you do. You do marketing.
oh yeah, yeah.
All right. You do plumbing. Right.
Some of that.
Yep.
I try to
You
stay away
do
from
trash.
Stay from that part of it.
You do custodial stuff, right? You are a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I don't claim to be the one.
You are a designated driver.
Hold on, what does that mean?
I'm just, you know what I mean? Like
What are
if
we
somebody's
talking about?
called, I'm just saying, if somebody runs into problems, well, maybe not y'all. Listen,
Now listen, that's where I stop. That's where I draw the
I'm not
line.
designated
Like,
driver,
right,
Brady.
I can't
What
be
they
the
doing
one
at Bethel
to
Church?
do
What's
it.
going on in here?
Yeah, they probably ain't calling it pastor. My bad. Let's,
Actually, I take that back. I think I actually have driven a few people.
But I guess I'm just trying to think through all of the things that are required for you to have at least a little bit of knowledge of.
Yeah. Yeah, there's... It can seem, overwhelming sometimes because, the majority of the time, whereas a for-profit business has a budget to really delegate out responsibilities that are kind of sectioned off. There's a joke, at the end of every job description at a church, it needs to be, you also know how to stack chairs and break them down and set up tables. Like we even mess around with some of our pastors at the church, and when people ask me who they are, they'll be like, "Oh, that's so and so. He's our pastor of chairs and tables." And but a lot of times there's so much bleed over and the set of skills that you have to be able to do to just fill the gaps.
Because like, I remember thinking as a business, this first came to my mind as a business owner because I had never been a senior pastor, right? I'd only been a youth pastor. So there was always somebody kind of above me, if you will. When I went into business for the first time, I remember that feeling, and it was a little bit make you take a deep breath, where you're like, I'm the last line of defense. In other words, if something doesn't occur, I'm the one who's going to make it occur if it's going to occur. And there was at least in my heart, and maybe I don't want to speak for you guys, but I would imagine that feeling exists for a senior pastor, right? That at the end of the day, you're going to be the one.
Yeah, but I think this is where the church world can learn from businesses and organizations. Is like, it's tempting to feel that way, but if you're raising up and not just delegating, but empowering leaders, there are people to the left and the right of you that feel the same way, and that burden gets divided and it's spread out. And so I'll be honest with you, there have been seasons in unhealthier seasons where I probably assumed more control than I really had. But when I'm healthy and I look up over the scope of leaders at the church, honestly, I don't feel overwhelmed by the buck stopping with me, because I know there are other people that they take this just as serious, if not more serious, than myself.
Yeah, there's like ego management, like inserted in all of that too, where I do need to delegate, but there's this feeling of needing to be needed. And, for the bulk of July, I've been on sabbatical from my church. And for many of them, the perception is he needs his rest. But honestly, for me, it's ego management. So I need to teach myself that I'm not as necessary as I think I am.
It could go on, yeah.
And I also need to see other young ministers doing well in my absence. I need to be their biggest cheerleader, as they often are to me. And being a senior pastor, at any point you don't want to take it no more, you can end it. Forget it, it's over. I'm gonna be back next week. But you got to sit there in it. You got to eat it. You got to support. And that's a thing that God's really been doing and working in and on me over the last couple summers. This summer was a lot easier, but it's been work.
Yeah, and that's a huge, there's so much leadership principle stuff in that, right? About how do you lead or serve in such a way that it does pass leadership on and out and away. Yes, that's a biblical principle, but it's also, just a leadership principle. I mean, if you guys have also coached teams, right? So that's probably the best metaphor. The quarterback can't do everything, right? I mean, there's going to have to be a division of labor if we're going to win.
Yeah,
somebody's got to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I know you guys have noticed that.
Yeah, there's this quarterback series, I think it's on Netflix, that my wife fanboyed all the way through. Oh yeah, with Pat Mahomes and Mariota and all that. Yeah. I'm almost about to throw up just talking about it, but there was so much in it that, as good as these quarterbacks are, without that offensive line, it makes the difference between a successful and a subpar year. So you see these running backs and quarterbacks, and they're buying Rolexes and golf carts for their offensive lines because they know, I don't pass for this amount of yardage if I don't get this protection. So it takes a team.
Sport Durst Volkswagen Mazda of Goldsboro is proud to support Wayne County Chamber of Commerce. Family owned and operated, Sport Durst knows the importance of keeping local money local and supporting the community. We put our customers first with the area's best pricing, best trade-in value, and best selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. Come experience the Sport Durst difference, where customers and community come first.
So something that is probably, it may be this way for small businesses, but like in larger businesses, I don't think they maybe deal with what I'm about to say as much, but I would think that a lot of people, and I find myself even doing this now, like if the pastor's not, up front, or if I'm not talking to the pastor, then I'm not talking to the right person.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's still pretty pervasive, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean,
from the consumer side of faith and that
and
sort
it's
of thing.
it's part of that negative stereotype that you brought up. Yeah, and especially I feel like being in the South, it's the superhero pastor model is pretty prevalent, but I see it shifting. I see the culture of that that changing, but it's a two-sided coin. A lot of people put that all on the pastor. Well, if he didn't have such an ego and he wasn't trying to always be the man and da-da-da and da-da-da, like it wouldn't be like that. But if you look all the way back to the Old Testament, God wanted to rule over the people of Israel, but the people, they wanted a king. Right. And it's something that as a pastor, really a better word probably would be under shepherd. As an under shepherd of Jesus over to his local body of believers, there's this sense that we have the responsibility of caring for them, taking care of them, being there for them, but making sure that they never put us in a place that we don't belong. You can't get God's stuff from a human being. Mm-hmm. And we don't ever want to get in the way of that.
Right.
Yeah. You see that Moses model of leadership where his father-in-law comes and tells him, bro,
Jethro,
you're doing too much.
Too much.
It's like you killing these people and you going to die in the process. And if we be honest, in 21st century, we see more of that model of leadership than we do the reverse, as he kind of course corrected.
Yeah. So both of you guys lead what I would consider, some of the more diverse churches and that we're going to get into that a little bit deeper here in a few minutes, but to lead a diverse group of people, it takes a special skill set, right? I don't know, anybody can lead a group of people who are always thinking and looking and acting like them, right? But the special skills required of a pastor to lead a diverse group of people with different stories, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I find wisdom in being slow to speak, quick to hear. Admitting I don't know it all. And despite everything that you feel like I'm able to teach you, you can teach me so much more because I don't know your perspective. I don't know your lens, but I can learn it if I'll take time to listen. So I think one of the most prevalent things when it comes to diversity, and that's not just ethnicity, is being a listener. And that's not just in our congregations, but it's in our communities. It's in the barbershops. It's at our family reunions. And not only a listener, but a reader. And not just a reader, but a constant learner.
Yeah, I think somebody smarter than me one time said that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Hey, don't do that. Somebody smarter than me. Just say my name.
Okay. So Pastor Terry one time told
I didn't say that, but I like it. Terry Jones.
Okay, I'm about to start singing. What is this? So Pastor Terry one time said that culture eats. No, it's a really true statement. It's like when you try to take a group of people somewhere that you are not personally, you have now ventured into the doing zone. And I think that, leading diversity in any way, and it's like he said, just randomly at our church, like a month ago, we had someone come up on stage to translate the conclusion of the sermon because we had so many Spanish speakers. And it was not planned. But two women gave their lives to Jesus.
And you guys made a move after that, did you not? Like you
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. That's just what we have no clue what we're doing. We're just trying. But it's like you can set all these initial. Oh, we're going to be diverse, and we're going to be that, and we're going to be this. But if the culture of an organization is not prime for diversity, and that's what you can't just go out and be diverse, because then you're going to have a diverse crowd of people show up, and when they don't look like, talk like, act like, speak like the rest of the people there, they ain't going to come back, because they're going to look at you and say, well, number one, I don't see myself represented here at all. This seems like a good old boys country club. It don't seem like a place where I'm welcome. I think the culture of the organization is more important than any kind of initiative or strategy that you could implement.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's very good. And I think there's so much for businesses to learn from that. Like, because, we're in a cycle where it seems like we're in a cycle anyway, best I can tell, where these businesses are trying to come to grips with a changing culture. Like, I'm using culture, I guess, in a little different way. I don't want to confuse our listeners or whatever, but they're trying to get an understanding of the landscape. So it's what people are calling woke, right? And so businesses, it seems, are trying to sort of respond to that in a very transactional way.
Yeah.
And it's backfiring.
Sure.
And I think it's for that exact reason that you just said. Like, people know the difference between authentic and not authentic. Like, if you didn't care about everybody before, don't try to act like you care about everybody now just because you changed the label on your product.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Same thing with the church, same thing with the business. Like we're going to reach more this or that today. Well, you're going to need to do more than put it on a sign.
Yeah. I mean, so much of that kind of stuff it's not easy, but it is simple. And just Jesus sums it up when he's pinpointing what's the most important commandments. He says, love Lord your God with everything you've got. But then the second thing he says is as equal as the first is just love people like you love yourself. And honestly, it's just a few words in scripture, but it is something that is really, it's difficult to see where you don't love people like you would want to be loved yourself, where we do still have these stereotypes and these feelings about certain demographics of people, and we treat people differently. And until we're open and honest about that, I don't think the cultures of our organization can ever shift towards a real unconditional love towards someone, no matter where they come from.
Yeah, and I guess the reason that culture trumps everything.
Yeah.
I remember old Andy Stanley. Remember that old pastoral? Anyway, he used to say, "Culture trumps everything," and it's because trust is what's most important.
Sure.
I mean, and that's the reason culture trumps everything, is because if I don't trust you, I can't follow you. I can't be connected to you, at least not for long periods of time. We can have a short term. It's going to be, it's not a long-term relationship. It's a one-night stand. You know what I mean? Because there's not trust, right?
Yeah. And the power of that is that level of trust doesn't always require that we agree.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But because of the trust, I understand.
That's right.
But again, that goes back to listening. I don't agree with you, but I took the time to listen to you, and I understand your perspective. We can agree to disagree. Like my guy right here, when life gets turned, this is one of my first phone calls. When things happen throughout the country, throughout the community, things I don't understand, I don't know this vantage point, this is one of my first phone calls. So tell me, I don't like this.
Yeah.
So now you give me your perspective. I think that's what, not just our world, our community as people, this is more of what we need.
Yep.
Sadly, sometimes our first response is on social media.
Yep.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to be combative if you front me out on social media.
And you don't have to vouch. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to. People are such cowards. I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
Can I say it out loud?
Well, you don't pastor no more, so
I can
say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking that you said.
People are going hard on social media, and they don't have to say things face to face. They don't have to, they don't have to acknowledge whatever it is that they're saying may impact somebody else directly.
They're not real conversations. It's not real. It's not even nobody's listening to engage and discuss. I guarantee you this. You could go on social media and see people go back and forth at it and then listen to one of the conversations that we've had in private on the phone. And we go 10 times harder in those conversations. But it's because I trust that no matter what I say to him,
that's right.
He is going to say to himself,
there's still going to be
that's
care.
his perspective.
Yeah,
He's not going to. It's a trust versus suspicion.
That's right.
Type thing. He's not going to indict me on being a racist just because I simply am speaking from a level of understanding.
Yeah, and Mike Krzyzewski, I hate to bring that up. I'm a Duke fan, but sorry.
No.
Listen,
respect
I love
the Coach K.
I love winners. That's all I know. I can't help it. No, I'm kidding.
Tell us where you live.
You're a Carolina fan, man. Come on.
To the next question. Can we just keep going, please?
But Coach K talks about how at the beginning of every team, every cycle, and he's talking about trying to establish culture. He says in fact, he talked about this with the USA team, and he had the same conversation with LeBron, and he said, "Look at me in my eyes." And he said the reason that we do that, and there's a handful of tools he uses, is because we have to have trust. We have to have trust because we're going to get in the thick of it, and I'm going to have to say some things that you're not going to like. And you're going to have to say some things I'm not going to like. And we still got to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's got to work quickly. Like, we don't have forever. And he said he learned that from the Army. Because if soldiers were in battle and, your commanding officers there has to be enough trust that you can be honest. Yeah. If you can't be honest, you don't have trust and you won't have culture.
Right.
Right. And you won't. I think there will always be wouldn't you agree that there's always going to be a cap on the ability of that team to grow or that organization or that business to grow if you can't speak freely, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now I'm a Tar Heel all day, Dean Smith, old school. Yeah. You understand?
I like Dean.
But even in my watch it. Even in my coaching seasons, I was a Coach K fan. I mean, and one of the things I learned from him, and I implemented even with my teams, especially after loss, everything is so personal. People are sensitive. My guys come in for practice. And before we started, we would sit in the place where they just lost. So let's talk about last night. What did we do? How can we grow? How can we improve? We get all the icky out. Everybody's good. And then he'll get his team up. They'll move down to the other end. So today we got to start preparing for Thursday. Right. Today it's this moment of transition and moving on. Mm-hmm. And so many of our relationships would be so much healthier if before we moved on, we talked about the icky.
That's right. And that could occur if we could be honest with one another because we had trust.
Absolutely. And
so it's just eroded, it seems. So I guess I want to really dig into that. When I look around the community in Wayne County in particular, and Wayne County I think is reflective of maybe a larger something that's going on in the country, and maybe even the world, but certainly in the United States over the last maybe, 10 years. We have these challenges that seem to have crept up. And it's not that these challenges didn't always exist, but when I look at Sunday, for example, Sunday mornings are one of the most segregated hours of the entire week. How is it that people who espouse these values that are supposed to be, unselfish and gracious and graceful and all these things, right? How is it that we can't seem to merge? And does it seem like to you guys that we've gone backwards in some ways? It just feels like there's tension and division, particularly between black and white. And What are you guys? I mean, you guys have a better perspective than a lot of us. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, there was a couple things there. I think I'll maybe just address the first one that came up when that Sunday morning. By and far, still appears to be the most segregated hour of the day. I think that's the MLK Jr. quote, and in understanding how does that happen in the context of people who adhere to a value where we do believe that all men are created equal, that God doesn't look on the outside, but he looks on the inside. I mean, I can go on and on and on about these things. I just want to address that. I think sometimes there's a misconception about those that follow Jesus. Yes, when we hear the gospel and we confess Jesus as the Son of God and that God raised him from the dead, we're saved. We're justified instantaneously. But the sanctification process takes a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so people, even though they're following Jesus, they don't always look just like him instantly. So there still are things that are left residing, even in the life of a believer, that they have to grow and mature through. So I think we just need to remember that. I mean,
we're still humans, yeah.
We're still human beings. We still have a flesh. We still live in a sinful world, and we're still being attacked spiritually. And the enemy doesn't like unity. So there's an all-out attack on it for sure.
Yeah. I think I agree wholeheartedly. I also think the reality is, in the fullness of that truth, you also have to consider the head start. 400 plus years of mistreatment, enslavement, inhumane treatment that continues to linger. Even this entire conversation, in large part, has been about trust. That's a whole nother conversation in a room dominantly engulfed with African-American people. Trust, bruh? Where did that get me last time? That's a whole nother conversation. So when we talk about these truths, the truth to some part is contingent upon the lens wherein it's viewed. And we have to be willing sometimes to take off our bifocals and see it through another lens, where that truth can be communicated compassionately and considerately relative to people's personal plights and cultural issues, things along that line.
And do you think that progress that maybe had been made has in some ways been depleted? Like, do you guys see that? Do you see where maybe it looked like we took some steps forward, but now we've taken a few steps back in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years or something? I don't know. It just seems like there's just more. I don't know. It's just there. It's raw. It's on the surface. Whereas before, maybe it was. I think maybe prejudice has always existed, right? I mean, I'm not trying to get into that. Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always a little bit edgy feeling about broad, sweeping statements. I think that there's some little microcosms, even in our community, where it's gotten better and better, and it's getting better.
Right.
As far as a whole, I don't know that I really know the answer to that question. I know that in my personal circles that people are understanding each other on a completely different level. And when these things come up in the media where they used to drive apart, it's just galvanizing what we're experiencing in our church and in the communities that we're a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like back in the day where, like, you remember Take 10 at Berkeley Mall?
Yeah.
And I think it used to be like a little beaver game where it got these little beaver heads keep popping up and you got to bop them over the head. And it's like as soon as you think you got him, his head goes underneath and it pops up another way. In many cases, when you talk about like racism these types of issues coupled with trust from an African-American perspective, I'm just gonna speak for me. Sometimes it feels like as soon as I think I got it, it just pops its head up in another way. And so has it gotten better? I don't know if I can speak to that. I think I can say we are seeing a consistent recreation of old habits and new forms. And that sometimes makes trust that much more difficult. Now, when you say, is it better? I think there's an individual responsibility to be intentional. And so for me, my efforts are intentional. With my brother here, my effort is intentional. So, you saw what happened, right? So we're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be my guy, we got to talk about that. And we got to keep it 100. And might take 48 hours. It might let you finish your 7-day revival in Rwanda, but as soon as you get back,
you got
call
to say
me.
it like that.
And we're gonna have to talk about it.
Yeah.
But again, that's that intentionality where I feel like I know him. I know that I love him. Our relationship has gone through such a span of time. I'm willing to fight for this. Yeah. And I think as people, with our hearts to the best of our abilities being pure, there's certain relationships we got to fight for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like such a worthy thing to fight for. I mean, and not so you can wear a shirt or put it on Twitter or anything like that, but for the sake of in your home, for the people that you grow up with, the people that your kids like to start. I mean, I guess to understand that if I moved to, South Carolina tomorrow and I took my kids and we didn't know anybody, I want my kids to be treated a certain way. I don't need them to be pampered or babied or given extra special whatever, but somebody might have to go out of their way to make sure that they are accepted, embraced, right? Loved, cared for, safe, and secure. If I just take that principle, it seems like to me it should impact how, whether I'm a person of faith or I'm not a person of faith, that there's just a sort of a human consideration and a human decency to have for other people that I would want the same consideration for me. And it's just like the golden rule, right? I mean, even if you don't get biblical, it's not rocket science to say, hey, is it unreasonable for us to just treat one another the way we want to be treated? And if when you talk about, because I'm trying to think of, as I heard you talking, I was trying to think, well, what strategy would I employ to make sure I drop my lens? Well, I think that's part of the strategy. If I see something occur on the news, and I just take the lens off and I say, all right, or I put the lens on maybe of, I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I love my community. Would I want that to occur in my home, to my family? Would I want that said, done, thought, whatever the circumstance is? Don't you?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, it just seems like, to me, that's not rocket science.
Yeah.
But it seems like we seem farther from being able to do that in some cases. You guys are highly evolved, I think, compared to like most of the public. I mean, you're not perfect, of course, but because of one another, and I've seen this over time, that relationship has made you better and made you more culturally, I think, able to.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a theology podcast, but it's kind of hard to separate myself from and both of us from the foundation that we stand on. But I mean, Scripture was tackling racial tensions before anybody was. You can see several conversations between the apostles, and where we think the black and white thing is bad. I mean, the Gentile Jewish thing was.
Yeah, Samaritans.
20 times worse. And that stuff was being tackled there. And even listening to you talk about how you would want your kids to be treated. What I'm hearing you say is, I would want my kids to be loved. I'd want them to be people to be patient with them. I'd want people to be kind.
That's right.
To them. And the Bible is
grace.
the manuscript
Right. Yeah,
on love. So it really does. Even these tough conversations, you can't even have them if you don't genuinely love each other.
Yeah. Even a few weeks ago with Lyft, and we had an opportunity to sit down with Wayne County Public School administrators from across the county. Which was pretty cool, by the way.
It
was absolutely incredible. Yeah. And we listened. We asked questions to initiate conversation, but we listened. And, there are times where we withhold truth because, I don't want to hurt him or her. I want to protect them. But in reality, sometimes when we withhold truths that are going to help another, we're actually being selfish.
Yeah.
And when we can do this in a peaceable manner, there have been instances where, I'm loving everybody, be at peace with all men. But if you do wrong by my children, we got a problem.
Okay, you are, right?
But at the same time, How do you define problem?
Yeah.
Problem is, call this teacher on the intercom. He needs to meet me at this parking lot. And it's about to go down. On the other hand, what if I schedule a parent-teacher conference and say, hey, this is what my child told me. Is there anything you would like to share? All right. I'm not here to argue with you, but the standards in our house are this. This is what I expect from my children. If you have a problem, can you reach out to me and let me correct it in a manner that's worthy within our household and our understanding? Again,
so it's like a process thing.
It's
not
a peaceable conversation, but that also opens up a new lens for that teacher, that administrator, that business owner to see my home through a different perspective. It's a teachable moment. But if we don't approach those moments correctly, they won't be received.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, we have a platform today. If you had suggestions, what could we as a community do to take steps to improve and grow?
Yeah, I will say quickly. Again, I hate questions like this because sometimes it comes off as if we have the answer, and if we had the answer, there'd be no problem.
I understand.
But at the same time, as has been mentioned numerous times, conversations. Again, as we had with Lyft, as I do with my brother, you, Mr. Collins, your wonderful staff, all of you guys, we have camaraderie. We can communicate openly in a healthy manner where there is a point and a reasonable conclusion to discussion and understanding. So from a community perspective, the more we can do that, now I don't want to sound false. I think there is a time where we got to flip a table over, like ignorance is ignorance. We just might have to flip this table over. But for the most part, I think there's a peaceable camaraderie that we can all have and come to a healthy conclusion.
I think I would just say, kind of piggybacking on what he said, is you can look out over the horizon. You can see all these problems. You can be negative about it. You can get overwhelmed with everything that needs to change. But the truth is that everybody just drew a small circle, and was willing to, change everything in that circle for the good. It's just so doable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just
sure.
You
don't have to go change everybody else's school. Just work on the one that
you don't
your
have
kids
to go
go
parent
to.
everybody else's kids.
That's
Parent
right.
your kids.
That's
You
right.
don't have to solve this and that and that. Just be passionate about whatever your hands find to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do it heartily and do it unto the Lord, not unto man. And I think a lot. And that's like he said. I'm hesitant to answer this question because a lot of times we've got these really good answers for the masses, but don't have them for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just say personal responsibility.
Well, and something that did come up at that principal event that I do think is helpful, and this came up, we were speaking with Andrea Freeley, who's she's kind of the Latino, Latina, Latinx. We went through those definitions, but she leads an effort for the public school system to make sure families are supported and encouraged, and all families can participate and all that sort of stuff. But the conversation came back to one of the best things you could do is show up at a school, spend an hour with a kid. And that is exactly what those principals said. That's exactly what they said. Have you said you want to see the schools be better? You want to see the schools change? You want to see the community change? Don't talk about it, be about it. You know what I mean? Like, just show up. All you have to do, you talked about this, we were talking about this the other day. What do you have to do to register to be a public school volunteer?
Just go to the Wayne County Public School website, and it's pretty easy to find. Just submit a volunteer application. It takes 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, those principals, they point blank say you can leave your Pop-Tarts at home. Like, we just want
so
you.
True.
Like, everybody thinks there's so much that has, we got to take food, we got to do this, we got to, like,
and leave your cameras at home too.
And leave your cameras at home, like, because it seems disingenuous every time you have to take a photo of yourself and your church group. Oh, look at these poor kids that were, you can be the change too.
Yeah, look at how great we are.
Right, just do it yourself. One of the principals said, just come out there when the buses pull up and hang out for 30 minutes.
High five.
Like,
I remember. You remember when they were talking
bumps.
about just fist bumps and high fives? I was like, who can't do that? You can be retired for 20 years and go do that. Like, you can be fresh out of school. You can be any age, any person, any socioeconomic status, and show up and fist bump a kid. And when you heard those principals saying it that way, I was like, oh gosh, that's very tangible action. So, I mean, maybe one of the solutions is something like that, something very practical, like where, what would happen if, 1,000 people in Goldsboro decided, hey, we're just going to show up at schools once a week. Yeah. We're going to fist bump some kids, It seems like that would go a long way.
Yeah, there's so many people hurting, grieving, lonely, and without relationships where the power and the ministry of presence is more than anything right now. There's so many funerals that I go to that I don't sit on a platform. I'm not on the program or the schedule, but I wanted people just to see my presence because my presence was ministry for that day. And the same can be applied to many of our students in our communities who are longing to see their father, who may have been killed or may be incarcerated or may just doesn't care, at least for this season. And I can be your pretend father for this morning. I'm proud of you. You got here. I'm proud of you. Mm-hmm. So
that's good. At this stage of your life, both of you have been very successful. And I think well loved, rightfully so, because of the investment you made in people's lives. But at this stage, what motivates you? Like, what gets you going? What energizes you, wakes you up?
I mean, I told my wife this the other day. I was like, I can't believe I get to do this and I put the word job in parentheses. Like, it's not easy. I mean, but I love it. I mean, I preached a bajillion times this past week. Then after the end of our second service, got to sit on the front row and just talk to people about like their lives and the things they were passionate about. And then ended up going, like you said, to a funeral Sunday. And one of my buddies and a guy in our church, his mom died. And when he saw me, he just started crying and he grabbed me and the first words out of his mouth was, man, I'm going to be with you forever. We're going to do this together forever until I die. Mm-hmm. And it was just, so that's just one.
Yeah, one example of.
Yeah.
It's fuel.
It is. And two, it's like I tell people all the time, and I want to get, I don't want to sit here and hog the mic on this question, but.
Preacher.
I tell people all the time is, like, as far as pastoring a church, people, they'll come to me and they'll be like, we started coming to church here. We really like it and da-da-da. And I'm like, and I'm always messing around. I don't know what to say because I'm not going to take responsibility. Well, I'm glad you like what I've done. No, I haven't done this. So my response lately has been, That's awesome. I like it too. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, I'd come here if I wasn't pastoring here. So a lot of drive for things that I want to see happen in our local church is, one of the things is that I want it to be a place that I feel content with my children being raised there. That is the kind of place that I'm okay with my kids spending their most formidable years growing and developing and hearing the messages that are coming out. And if they adopted our church's culture as a dad, I'd be okay with it.
So you get to wake up and shepherd that vision every day, right?
Yeah, man.
That's pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. I want to, to make life easier for someone who's present. Whatever I can do today to make life easier for you. And God forbid when my time comes and I'm no longer here, I want to make life easier for whoever's after me, whether pastorally or family, fathers, wives. I want what I've done, what I've taught, what's been said to make life easier for somebody else.
10-4. Well, y'all, I could have this conversation all day long, right? But
Sure.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for what you do in the community. Thank you for what you do for your churches. Thank you for what you're doing for our chamber. And I just appreciate your friendship. And it means the world to me and to my family, and always has. And I'm thrilled that we could, share a little conversation today.
Yeah, me too.
So thank y'all for being here, and we wish y'all the best.
Absolutely.
Yes.